I recently spent an afternoon watching a group of freshmen standing in a rigid, perfect line behind a faculty building. It was pouring rain, and they were soaking wet, yet not one of them dared to wipe the water from their eyes. A senior student, barely 2 years their elder, paced back and forth, barking orders about loyalty and the sacred tradition of the organization. One particular freshman caught my eye. He had this look of intense, almost religious pride, as if he were participating in something profound. When I spoke to him later, he told me with a straight face that this mental training was the only way to become a true leader. He spoke about the university as a sanctuary of freedom and the Tridharma with the fervor of a believer. But then the conversation took an interesting turn. I asked him what he thought about a recent, widely criticized hike in campus tuition fees that was currently squeezing his peers. The transition was instantaneous. The fire in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cautious, darting glance toward his senior. "It's not my place to complain," he whispered, his voice suddenly small. "We're taught that the institution knows best. Questioning them just creates unnecessary noise." It was a jarring contradiction. Here was a young man who spent his mornings reading about the Enlightenment and the agora of ideas, yet by the afternoon he was perfectly content being what Paulo Freire called a banking student, an empty vessel waiting to be filled with the ideology of submission. He wasn't being molded into a thinker, he was being housebroken. That moment of silence, that instinctive fear of making noise, reveals a disturbing reality about the modern campus. We claim to be building the leaders of tomorrow, but the machinery we've built seems designed to produce something else entirely. A highly disciplined, remarkably quiet, and perfectly obedient workforce. It's clear our universities are no longer just laboratories of resistance, but have become factories for the manufacturing of consent.
That is... what a haunting image. The student in the rain, just voluntarily getting soaked, paralyzed by this manufactured hierarchy.
Really stuck with me.
And before we even dive into the machinery of it all, I want to pause on something specific you mentioned in that story. You said he spoke about the Tridharma. Now, I think for a lot of people listening, that might just sound like some, esoteric campus term.
Yeah, it's not exactly common parlance.
But it is absolutely critical to understanding the sense of betrayal here.
Right. Okay, let's unpack that right away.
Yeah.
Tridharma is a term that gets used in certain academic circles. It's basically the three pillars of higher education.
The Holy Trinity, so to speak.
Exactly. You've got education, you've got research, and you have community service. That's the mission.
That's the ideal. It's the promise the university makes to all of us, to society. The whole idea is that the institution exists to teach, to discover new truth, and crucially, to serve the public good. And what makes your story so jarring is the massive gap between that ideal, serving the public, seeking truth, and the reality of what that student was actually doing. He wasn't serving the public, he was serving a senior student. He wasn't seeking truth, he was actively avoiding noise. He was performing obedience while quoting a philosophy of liberation.
We're looking at how that Tridharma, that core mission, has been, it feels like it's been hijacked. This isn't just about telling stories about, bad hazing incidents. This is about the structural transformation of the modern university. And I know we have listeners who look back on their college days with so much fondness. The late night debates in the dorms, the feeling of walking across the quad in the fall, that sense that you are stepping into this special protected world of ideas.
It's a powerful memory for a lot of people.
And I want to be really clear. We're not trying to burn that memory down, but the material we're looking at today suggests that that special world is being eaten from the inside out by a very, very different kind of logic.
We're basically peeling back the layers of the onion, and what we're finding is this convergence of three really distinct, powerful forces. First, we're going to look at the economic incentives, what's been called administrative bloat. Bureaucracy. Then second, we're going to get into the sociological mechanisms, how the organic social bonds between students are being, dissolved. And finally, we're going to look at the financial trap, the debt, the thing that, kind of seals the whole deal.
So we have a three-part machine here: bureaucracy, sociology, and finance. All right, let's start with that first gear then, the money and the managers. We've got a story in our notes about a professor, an associate professor. Well, let's call him Dr. Eris.
All right. Dr. Aris. He's at a large state university in the American Midwest. He's been teaching classical rhetoric for, I think, 15 years.
So he's seen some changes.
He's seen a lot of changes. And this is a guy who really believes in the idea of the agora, the Greek marketplace of ideas. He sees his classroom as a space where ideas are supposed to clash. His whole job, as he sees it, is to get students to argue, to think critically, to challenge each other.
It's the Socratic method.
The Socratic method, exactly. But lately, he's noticed that the physical landscape of his campus is changing. And it's changing in a way that's making his job, well, almost impossible.
So,
well, he mentioned that his own department, the rhetoric department, was struggling, really struggling, to find the funding for a single teaching assistant.
just one TA, someone to actually help grade papers, run study sessions, the nuts and bolts of teaching.
But at the exact same time, he watched the university break ground on this massive, shiny new wing for a building. It's called Administration South.
Administration South. Sounds corporate.
And this new wing, it wasn't for classrooms, it wasn't for research labs, it was office space for dozens of new non-faculty directors.
Like what kind of titles are we talking about?
Oh, no, Director of Strategic Harmony, VP of Institutional Alignment. My personal favorite was Coordinator of Student Life Optimization.
Coordinator of Student Life Optimization. I don't even know what that means.
Who does? And Dr. Aris pointed out something crucial. These administrators, they often command salaries that completely dwarf those of the actual researchers and professors. But it wasn't just the money that bothered him, it was the intrusion, the mission creep.
He described a feeling of becoming, and this is his phrase, a banking clerk.
A banking clerk. Powerful.
He said these new administrators started issuing mandates, directives about what had to be on an approved syllabi. They wanted standardized learning outcomes. They wanted to minimize risk, minimize controversy. He felt like he was being told to just deposit these prepackaged ideological scripts into his students' heads as if they were empty vaults, not to teach them how to think.
And this is where we really need to stop and look at the hard data, because it's so easy to just dismiss Dr. Aris as, a grumpy old professor who just doesn't like change.
Ready to go in the times, that sort of.
But the numbers from a couple of different institutes, they back him up completely. If we look at a really critical window of time, say from 1993 to 2007.
Okay, about 15 years.
The number of full-time administrators per 100 students at America's top universities grew by 39%.
39%. Okay. The world is just more complicated now than it was in 1993, right?
Yeah.
Universities have to deal with way more federal regulations. They need massive IT departments. They need mental health counselors. They need compliance officers for Title IX.
True.
So isn't this just necessary growth? Maybe bloat is the wrong word. Maybe it's just what modernization looks like.
That is the standard defense. And, it holds water up to a point. You absolutely need IT support and you absolutely need compliance officers. But the data shows something else is happening underneath that. While the administration grew by that 39%, the number of employees actually engaged in teaching, research, or service, the people doing the actual tri-dharma work.
The core product.
That group only grew by 18%.
Okay, so admin is growing at more than double the rate of the actual mission.
Double the rate. And if you look at the spending, it's even more stark. Inflation-adjusted spending on administration per student jumped by 61% in that period.
61%. So the overhead is just eating the budget.
It's devouring it. But to really, really answer your skepticism, let's look at a specific case study from the sources. Let's look at Arizona State University. This is where that whole necessary growth argument just completely falls apart. In that same time frame, Arizona State increased the number of administrators per 100 students by 94%.
94. So they nearly doubled their administrative staff per student.
Nearly doubled it. In that same period, they actually reduced the number of faculty researchers by 2%.
Again, run that math by me one more time.
They almost doubled the number of managers while firing the people who do the research and teaching.
Possible. How do you justify that in a budget meeting? In any other industry on earth, that is a death spiral. You're cutting production and hiring more middle managers.
Precisely. And this introduces a concept that is absolutely vital if you want to understand the modern university. It's called diseconomies of scale.
Diseconomies. I've only ever heard of economies of scale. Like if I'm Ford and I build a massive factory, it gets cheaper for me to build each car because I can buy steel in bulk and streamline the assembly line. Bigger is supposed to mean more efficient.
Correct. In any healthy market, growth leads to efficiency. But higher education is exhibiting the exact opposite behavior. As universities get bigger, as they enroll more students, they are becoming less efficient.
They're hiring more people per student, not fewer.
Exactly. The bureaucracy is growing faster than the student body it's supposed to serve.
Why? I mean, is it just sheer incompetence?
It's not incompetence, it's incentives. See, in a normal corporation, if you get too bloated, if you hire too many VPs of synergy, a leaner competitor comes along, makes a cheaper, better car, and puts you out of business.
The market provides discipline.
The market provides discipline. But universities are almost completely insulated from that market pressure, and they're insulated by something known as the Bennett Hypothesis.
Which is also called the subsidy hypothesis, right?
The theory, in a nutshell, is that increased government subsidies, we're talking student loans, Pell Grants, they enable colleges to just keep raising tuition without losing customers.
Because the customer isn't really feeling the sticker price?
If Ford raises the price of a Fiesta by 50% tomorrow, you're going to go buy a Honda. But if a university raises tuition by 50% to pay for a new Department of Strategic Harmony,
the student doesn't walk away.
They just borrow more money. The government guarantees the loan, the university gets the cash deposited directly into its account, and the student gets the bill 10 years from now.
It's a vicious feedback loop. The government says, oh, college is so expensive, we have to increase the federal loan limits to help students afford it.
And the University Finance Office sees that higher loan limit and says,
great. We can raise tuition by that exact amount and hire 3 more assistant vice deans. And the price just spirals upward.
It's a spiral. And here's the other piece of it. Because these are nonprofit institutions, they don't have shareholders they need to pay dividends to. Money revenue.
Right.
It goes into what public choice economists call empire building.
Empire building.
If you're a dean or a provost, your prestige, your power within the institution is directly linked to how big your budget is and how many people report to you. You want a bigger staff, you want to control more resources. So you hire 3 assistant deans and, well, they all need secretaries and they all need a new office suite with new furniture. And suddenly you've got the brand new Administration South building that Dr. Aris is staring at out his window.
So Dr. Aris isn't just dealing with a lack of funding for his department. He's dealing with a hostile takeover of the university's entire purpose. The bureaucracy isn't there to support the teaching and research anymore. The teaching and research is just the excuse for the bureaucracy to exist and expand.
And that brings us right back to the control aspect. You asked if this was just modernization. Well, when you have that many administrators, they have to justify their salaries.
They can't just sit in their fancy offices.
They have to do something. So they create committees, they create task forces, they create new regulations for the faculty to follow.
Strategic harmony.
Right. They start policing the syllabus, they start wanting to measure learning outcomes, they start demanding that the beautiful, messy, unpredictable process of the Socratic method gets smoothed out into predictable, risk-free, quantifiable data points.
Which is why Dr. Aris feels like a clerk. The agora is messy. A great classroom discussion can go anywhere. It can be dangerous, it can be offensive, it can be revelatory. But a bureaucracy hates unpredictability. It craves standardization. It wants to turn education into an assembly line.
And there's the connection. The economic bloat directly causes the ideological conformity. The machine demands interchangeable parts that fit.
It is the industrialization of the mind. And you, the student, are paying more tuition to have more managers tell your professor to teach you less, or at least to teach you in a more constrained way.
It's a terrible deal when you put it like that. Yeah.
But it's not just the money and the managers. The sources we looked at point to a second parallel gear that's grinding these students down. And this one is, it's sociological.
This is the dissolution of the social bond.
Right. Let's go to our second story. We have a series of sort of anonymous online posts from a senior sociology student. Let's call him the Observer. He's at a very prestigious, very expensive liberal arts college. Now, this is a kid who came to university hoping to find, well, he wanted that Dead Poet Society experience.
We all did, I think.
We all did. He wanted to feel like he was part of a long, messy, but ultimately grand human tradition. He used the phrase he was looking for a shared civic religion.
A sense of belonging.
Exactly. But what he found almost immediately was that the classroom wasn't about building connection. It was about dissection. He said that in his sociology classes, every organic social bond, things like faith, patriotism, family, even just local community, was presented solely as a tool of oppression.
Only as a tool of oppression.
By his 3rd year, He said the critical theory that he was being taught wasn't just a lens for analysis anymore. He called it an acidic solvent. It dissolved the very foundations of his social world until, he said, there was nothing left but fragmented identities and, quote, mutual suspicion.
Powerful. And to really understand what he's going through, what he's describing, we have to look at the work of Emil Durkheim, who is really the father of sociology.
Okay.
Durkheim argued that for any group of humans to function as a society, whether it's a tribe, a nation, or a university, they need what he called organic solidarity. They need a collective conscience.
So that means we all have to agree on some basic fundamental thing.
It's more than just agreement. It's about holding certain things as sacred. Now, Durkheim, he wasn't necessarily talking about religious icons or gods.
Okay.
A flag can be sacred. A constitution can be sacred. The very idea of free speech can be a sacred value. These are the totems, the symbols that bind us together. They're what allow us to trust each other, even when we're strangers.
So in this context, the university used to have its own sacred totem. The pursuit of truth, with a capital T, the canon of great works, even just school spirit, the idea that we are all in this together, part of this community.
Correct. But the student's experience, what he's calling the acidic solvent, highlights what can happen when a specific interpretation of critical theory is applied without any kind of counterbalance.
And we need to be nuanced here, right?
We have to be nuanced. The sources discuss critical pedagogy, which comes from amazing thinkers like Paulo Freire and bell hooks. Freire wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He argued against the banking model that Dr. Aris was complaining about.
The empty vessel.
Freire wanted students to wake up to oppression, to become aware. That is a valid and often necessary intellectual tool.
Of course. If you're from a marginalized group, if the system is rigged against you, you need the tools to deconstruct it. You have to be able to see the wire.
Yeah.
And bell hooks, she talked about education as the practice of freedom. Right.
It is a great idea, but the sources argue that when this mode of deconstruction becomes the only mode of education, when it's all you do, it becomes the solvent. If you spend 4 years teaching a student that the flag is only a symbol of imperialism, that the family is only a structure of patriarchy, that the literary canon is only a tool of white supremacy,
you're only ever taking things apart.
You're only ever taking things apart. Eventually, you dissolve all the glue that holds things together. You leave that student standing alone in a pile of rubble with no tools to build anything new.
It's like teaching a mechanic how to take an entire car apart to see how it works. And you find out that, yeah, some parts are rusty and some parts are designed poorly. But then you never, ever teach the kid how to put the car back together. They can't drive anywhere. They're just stuck.
Analogy. And this is where the conservative counter-argument comes into play from thinkers like Edmund Burke or Michael Oakeshott.
Right.
Burke, writing about the French Revolution, warned that if you tear down traditions and institutions solely out of hatred for the hierarchy they represent, you don't end up with paradise. You end up with what he called the flies of summer.
The flies of summer. What does that mean?
It's a very poetic image. He means disconnected generations. People who are just born, buzz around for a little while, and then die with no link to the past and no sense of responsibility to the future. Without those sacred bonds of tradition, of shared story, we're just isolated individuals. We're just floating in the wind.
And that leads directly to the isolation that the observer student described. He said his peers retreated into their own silos.
And this is the potential dark side of identity politics when it becomes decoupled from a sense of universalism. I mean, if the primary way I define myself is by my specific grievance or my specific identity group,
right,
and if I'm taught to view everyone outside that group as a potential oppressor, or at least as inherently suspect,
then the agora dies. The marketplace of ideas shuts down.
It's impossible. We can't talk to each other. We can't debate. We can't find common ground. All we can do is stay in our lanes and shout at each other.
The observer student, he said he felt like a ghost. He's in a crowded seminar room surrounded by people, but he feels completely alone because there's no common language anymore. The tridharma, that shared mission of education and service, has been replaced by a war of all against all, for recognition and status.
And here is the really terrifying synthesis of those first two gears we talked about. If you have a student body that is fragmented, that is suspicious of one another, that has been stripped of its organic social bonds, They are incredibly easy to control.
Because they can't organize.
They cannot organize. They can't effectively push back against the administration. They can't protest the tuition hikes because they don't trust each other enough to stand in the same line.
On the line.
Unless, of course, they are ordered to stand in a line by a senior student with a tiny bit of manufacturer authority, like in your opening store.
Wow. The vacuum of organic authority like shared values or traditions is filled by the artificial authority of the bureaucracy. That is a chilling thought. So we've dissolved the natural community, which makes way for the managers and the rule makers to take over. But there's still one final gear to this machine, the gear that actually locks the cage.
The leash.
We have the bloat driving up the price. We have the isolation preventing resistance. Now we need to talk about the financial trap.
Yeah, a forcer.
A graduate student named Marcus. I came across an interview with this guy, brilliant mind, doing important work in economic history. But he's sitting on nearly $150,000 in federal loan debt.
And
he said something that I think a lot of people feel but are just too scared to say out loud. He admitted that he is intentionally self-censoring his research.
Self-censoring.
Well, he knows that his university's massive endowment is tied to certain social governance metrics. He knows the administration, the people who sign the checks, have a specific institutional worldview.
Okay.
And he knows that if he pursues a heterodox truth, if he writes a paper that fundamentally challenges the institutional narrative, he risks getting blackballed. He risks becoming unemployable within the academy.
And with that much debt.
He literally cannot afford to be unemployable. Quote, the Socratic pursuit of truth is a lie. For him, the only rational choice is ideological compliance. He has to play the game to pay the bill.
Marcus is the perfect example of what the philosopher Maurizio Lazzarato calls the indebted man.
The indebted man.
Lazzarato's argument is that debt is not just a math problem on a spreadsheet. It is a political technique. It is a method of governing people.
It's a discipline tool.
It is absolute discipline. Again, if you have zero debt and a little money in the bank, you have freedom. You can be a rebel. You can speak your mind. You can quit a job that compromises your ethics.
You can walk out of the line in the rain.
You can walk out of a line. But if you have six-figure debt hanging over your head, and crucially, debt that cannot be discharged in bankruptcy.
In the U.S., you are stuck with student loans until you pay them off or you die.
That's the trap. First, you have to be. You become that banking student, not because you're unintelligent, but because you are financially terrified.
You need the good grade to get the good recommendation letter to get the good corporate job.
To service the loan. The debt forces you to view your entire life, your entire self, not as a citizen to be engaged, but as a business to be managed. You become me incorporated.
And this connects to the broader financialization of the university, right? It's not just that tuition is high, it's that the debt itself has become a product to be bought and sold. I was reading in the notes about something called cell abuse.
Yeah. Student loan asset-backed securities. This is where we need to get a little technical, but it's the engine of the trap, so it's important. Do you remember The Big Short, the 2008 financial crisis?
Of course. Mortgage-backed securities. Banks took thousands of risky home loans, bundled them together, and sold them off to investors as if they were safe.
Exactly. The idea was that the house itself was the collateral. If the borrower didn't pay, well, the bank could just take the house.
Right.
Well, cell abusers are the exact same concept, but for student loans. Financial institutions bundle thousands of student loans together and sell them to investors. But think about the collateral for a second.
There is none.
There is no house. You can't repossess a diploma. You can't foreclose on someone's brain.
So, what is the collateral?
The student's future wages. The investor is literally buying a share of Marcus's future earnings. They are betting that he will get a high-paying job and pay off his loan with interest. Marcus is the asset. His future labor is the commodity being traded.
That makes my stomach turn a little bit. So there are hedge funds on Wall Street right now trading shares of Marcus's future paycheck?
Yes. And just like in 2008, there are some very smart, very cynical investors who think this entire system is a house of cards. The sources we have mention a firm called Pine Capital. They're a firm that has been shorting SLS.
Shorting, meaning they are betting that it will all fail. They're betting that the students won't be able to pay their loans back.
They're betting on default. And why would they make that bet? Because the fundamental logic of the whole system, what's called human capital theory, is breaking down. The theory just says, it's rational to go into debt to get a degree because that degree will increase your future earnings by X amount, more than covering the cost. on paper. But the data shows that while tuition has skyrocketed, it's up something like 157% at private universities in just 20 years. Real wages for recent graduates have remained largely stagnant.
So the price of the ticket to the middle class went way up, but the prize to the end stayed the same. The return on investment is crashing.
The math is broken, and firms like Pine Capital see that. They see students taking on mortgage-sized debt for jobs that pay rent-sized salaries. But here is the moral hazard. This is the part that should make you really angry. The universities and the loan servicers, they have zero skin in the game.
Oh.
When a university enrolls Marcus and gets him to sign those loan papers, they get paid up front. The federal government wires the full tuition payment directly to them. The university builds its lazy river, hires its new vice deans. They are cashed out.
And if Marcus defaults on that loan 10 years down the road?
The university doesn't have to give a single penny back. They took the cash, and the American taxpayer takes all the risk.
And the student takes the financial ruin. It is the perfect extraction machine.
It's exactly like the 9J loans from the housing bubble. No income, no job or assets. The university has no financial incentive to ensure that Marcus actually learns anything useful or gets a good job. Their only incentive is to get him in the door and get him to sign the loan papers.
This completely reframes the tridharma, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The student is no longer a mind to be cultivated for the public good. The student is a financial asset to be harvested.
The student is a revenue stream, and this brings us full circle, back to Marcus's silence. If Marcus understands, even subconsciously, that he is walking this incredibly precarious financial tightrope, he becomes the perfect subject. He will not challenge the professor. He will not question the administrator. He will parrot the approved syllabus because he needs the grade to get the job, to pay the debt, to keep the wolves of bankruptcy away from his door.
They learned at peonage.
We aren't creating leaders. We're creating a generation of indentured servants. We're engaging in a massive system of social reproduction where the financial class, the investors buying the SLAS, the administrators drawing the six-figure salaries, are literally feeding off the future labor of the learning class.
And the end product is a student body that is too expensive to fail and too indebted to speak.
It's a national tragedy, is what it is.
So, okay, let's pull all three of these threads together now, because when you stack them up like this, it feels less like a series of unfortunate disconnected problems and more like a design.
It is a convergence. It's a self-reinforcing system. Let's walk through the machine as a whole.
Okay.
Gear 1, administrative bloat. This is the economic engine. It drives up the cost of the university through diseconomies of scale and the relentless empire building of a non-faculty administrative class.
And that creates the need for the massive loans in the first place.
And it also creates the demand for conformity because this bloated bureaucracy needs to justify its own existence by managing and measuring every aspect of academic life.
Okay.
Gear 2. Sociological dissolution. This is where the misuse of critical theory and the rise of fragmented identity politics acts as that acidic solvent. It dissolves the organic solidarity that should exist within a student body. It breaks the shared civil religion of the university,
leaving the students isolated, suspicious of one another, and fundamentally unable to organize collectively against the institution. They become ghosts in the machine.
Exactly. And then you have Gear 3, the financial trap.
The leash.
The leash, the debt itself. This acts as the final enforcer. It takes that isolated, overcharged, atomized student and puts a gun to their financial head. It guarantees compliance. It guarantees they will remain risk-averse. It guarantees they won't make noise.
And that takes us right back to the beginning, back to the rain.
Yes.
That freshman, standing in that perfect line, refusing to wipe the water from his own eyes. When I first saw him, I just thought he was being hazed. Just some dumb campus ritual. But now, after looking at all this, I see him completely differently. He isn't just a kid getting wet in the rain. He is the finished product of this entire factory.
He's been stripped of his organic social bonds, so he clings desperately to the artificial hierarchy offered by the senior student. He's been trained to accept authority as absolute because questioning it creates unnecessary noise that he, deep down, knows he cannot afford.
He's enduring a systemic re-engineering of the human spirit.
Found.
The mental training that he was so proud of. It wasn't training him to be a leader. It was training him to be a perfectly obedient cog. It was a foreclosure on his entire intellectual future before it had even begun.
We claim to value the tridharma education, research, and public service, but the machine we have actually built is a system that values compliance, revenue, and above all else, silence.
It's a heavy realization. We all want our universities to be inclusive. We want them to be these amazing places of discovery, and those are beautiful, necessary goals. But we have to face the reality that when the Socratic pursuit of truth becomes a financial liability to an endowment's bottom line, and when community is dissolved by an acid bath of endless critique, academic freedom becomes nothing more than a marketing slogan on a brochure for a loan you can never, ever pay off. We are witnessing the industrialization of silence, and the machinery is running at full capacity.